1. I am very much an agnostic, but just like you, my parents have thrown me into religion. My real dad, not so much, but my mom and stepdad made sure I was in church with them. Pentecostal, Baptist, either of these would do for them. I never really cared too much for any of it, but I'll be damned if I didn't get my 15 minutes of fame. Not that I wanted it. Or did I? Turns out my mother was praying that day that she could show her piece of shit husband that God works through people. Maybe people pick up in one another. Maybe something more is at work. Hell if I know. I invited a friend to church that day with me because I didn't really care for that kind of environment. And having someone with me made it easier to cope. Next thing I know, during a prayer, while sitting in the front row, I walk towards the altar and then fall to my knees, followed by falling directly on my face and like a shit ton of bricks at that, holding my hands to my side like I'm saying, I don't know. I'm not at all telling you how real any of this is. There are explanations. None of them satisfy me, but during this time, I felt like I just got so damn high. Like I took mushrooms. And I have. I could not contain myself. It was a great sensation, but part of me can't help but wonder if it was something more important, like a medical condition. I got back up and made my way eventually back to my seat, totally inert like a goober, followed by a full load of clapping by the entire church, and a comment from the pastor's son about God having his way with people, along with my mom being very, very happy with me, while my friend thought I was out of my fucking mind. Though, I don't know his stance today. Looking back, I have to admit that there most certainly can be something to this. I am in support of you, friend, and even more so being that you grew up in a Catholic home where tradition is more important than personal or even spiritual expression. I am interested in the what and why, not so much the miracle or extraordinary event that takes place, as I consider myself a scientist. I know one way or another the answer comes after death, but I want you to know that I'm just a guy who read your comment and decided you might be able to use this. Nothing more. I am not here to tell you how wrong you are or what is wrong with you, because I have to work my way through my own problems. First assuming there are even problems. I can tell you, without a doubt, however, that this really did happen, and I did not even exaggerate any of it. Be well, buddy, and peace to you. You should understand that when I posted this comment, I am not judging or condemning religion. Like I said, I am agnostic, and I have a deep feeling that something about it is very real, whether I can pinpoint it or not. I do not, however, subscribe to any organized religion. I keep a maintained dialogue with what I call God, and it is very positive. I am a gay man, and I know that I am not welcome as who I am with mainstream religions, so things just kind of took that route accordingly. I feel like the guy trapped between two paradigms, but I never let it get in between what I consider relevant. Edit. A few of you might wonder what is so paranormal about this encounter. I can't fully answer that, but I can say that something took hold of me, whether it was something totally medical, body-related, or if it was something spiritual. I tend to follow the latter, but in no way can I be certain. The circumstances that followed the event made me question this, and the feeling I had in that trance was like the best drug on the market that I can never buy from a store or dealer. My friend considered me a nutcase. I explained to him that I was not doing by choice, but by force, as it seemed. 2. The following story is from our old friend Ashantes, who is a Mormon missionary. Sorry about the lack of updating you guys on my experiences. Turns out I've repressed most of these experiences, and remembering them has been a bit more taxing on my mental state than I had anticipated. So I'm trying to write these out as fast as I can, without going completely batshit crazy. And also, I've been getting a lot of hate mail from people trying to Bible bash me and trying to prove to me that I'm going to hell. And quite frankly, it's pissing me off. Now, if you have legitimate questions and want clarification on what I believe and why, or would like to have a civil discussion, I'm all for that. I'm not asking anyone to believe me or any religion. And the last thing I will comment on in the matter is, if you don't believe what I'm writing, don't read my posts. Anyway, it's the second to last week of the transfer. Neither of us are sure if we're getting transferred yet, as we don't get the news until 3 days before we have transfer meeting. I figured that it would be my companion that would be transferred, as he's finished his training, and they usually don't let you stay in your first area past that. We had gotten a call around 9:30 p.m. from my mission president, asking me, specifically, to call him back once we got in for the night. Now, I have never had any positive experience from anyone in authority over me to call them back, or come into my office. So I was assuming the worst, and that I was going to get sent home early. We had gotten back home for the night, and I still remember this moment, as it was yesterday. The time was 10:06 on Tuesday, November 12th, 2013. I returned my mission president's phone call per his request, and instead of the usual, "Hey, how was your day?" he jumped right into things and said, "Elder Law, I'm not sure exactly how to tell you this, but today at 2 p.m., your grandmother on your mother's side passed away." I just stood there in shock. And the only thing I could get out of my mouth was, "What?" I have always been extremely close to my grandma because I grew up just a couple miles away from her. So most of my childhood memories are from playing on the wooden playground my father made and sliding down the hill in the backyard on the massive tarp my grandma would pull out of the shed and run the hose on. My grandpa passed away 2 years prior, and since then, my grandma had been living with my aunt in Mesa, Arizona, a mere 5 miles away from where I was currently serving. My mission president denied all of my requests to go see her, so I could at least say goodbye. Because she had dementia for the past couple years and didn't even remember her husband passing away 2 years ago. So I was experiencing a wide range of emotions, from sorrow of my grandma's passing to rage towards my mission president for not letting me say my goodbyes, when I was so close by, and hadn't seen her since my grandpa's funeral. Needless to say, I didn't get any sleep that night, or the next few nights either, and for good reason. I was devastated, so much so that I refused to get out of bed for 2 days, and didn't eat anything either. As I lay awake in bed, not paying attention to how late it was, my companion suddenly sat upright in his bed and stared straight ahead, and didn't acknowledge my inquiries as to if everything was all right. He just sat there for what seemed like forever, and stood up, walked into the bathroom, came back out a short while later, and laid back down. It freaked me out, but I never asked my companion if he had a history of sleepwalking. But it was still creepy as hell. This happened 3 more times that night, except his destination was different each time. The next was the window overlooking the street out front, while the last time he attempted to open the door to the staircase. That was locked due to renovations the homeowners were doing at the time. The last time, my companion sat up and looked in my direction, only turning his neck in an almost 90-degree angle. I laid there, not paying him any attention because it was creepy, and I was extremely uncomfortable each time this would happen. I turned over in bed and faced my back to him, and the chilling voice hissed through the air shortly afterwards, saying, "Don't turn your back on me." This startled me, and I sat up almost immediately. I just stared at my companion for a little while when the voice said, "Don't tell me you've already forgotten about me, James." I was paralyzed with fear. Not once had I ever told my companions my first name, let alone anyone really. We always used elder and whatever the person's last name was to address each other, so there was no need to tell anyone your first name. I quickly rebuked the evil spirit, and almost immediately my companion fell backwards onto the bed and started flailing around as he had just woken up, and told me he had just had a terrible nightmare where someone was trying to convince him to kill me. I didn't tell him anything that had gone on just moments before, and told him that it was just a dream and to go back to sleep. I, however, was not able to fall asleep and spent the rest of the night listening to audio recordings of different sermons the leaders of the church would give biannually in what we refer to as General Conference. The next night, I had a dream about my grandmother. We were back at her old place in Sequoia, Idaho, and it felt like she was really there, and just as I remembered her as a child. After talking a short while, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "James, I am so proud of you, and the man you've become. And I just know you will do great things in the years to come. I wish we had gone to say goodbye in person, but you have to wake up now." As soon as she said that, I woke up, and I felt multiple demonic presences in the room. I sat up immediately. My gaze fell upon my companion, who looked like he was having a seizure, and I shit you not, was hovering at least a foot over the bed. I, once again, was paralyzed with fear. I tried to get the words out to rebuke the demon, just like I'd done the night before. However, I couldn't form the words, not even in my mind, and I hear an audible laugh come from behind me, and an icy hand grip my shoulder. I'm sobbing at this point, and convinced that I'm about to die, when the words my grandmother spoke to me in my dream came back to me, and I was filled with this warm and loving sensation that coursed throughout my entire being. I was no longer afraid, and even though my entire body was still trembling, I raised my right arm to the square and commanded the demons to leave this home and never bother the inhabitants ever again. Nothing seemed to happen, so I repeated my command a second time while gripping my companion's arm. The ground shook, and my companion fell onto the bed, and an unsettling silence filled the room. My companion, now awake, after falling back down onto the bed, asked me why I was holding his wrist. Before I could answer, the members of the church we were staying with came bursting through the door, asking why we were screwing around so late at night, and to be more respectful, as they were an older couple and had to work in the morning. I pretended I didn't know why, and that I was just as confused as he was. He concluded it must have been my sleepwalking again, but expressed his concerns about how it was getting worse, and that he is going to talk to our mission president about what we could do to help me stop sleepwalking. We still talk occasionally, and whenever the subject of our mission's trip comes up. He always asks me what really happened that night, because he asked many of my previous companions if I had ever done anything like that to them, and they all said no, but recounted their own experiences they had while I was their companion. And every time I'd get a new companion, my previous ones would tell them to keep an eye on me, because weird things always seem to happen when I'm around. They have no idea how correct they truly were. 3. I've been really into the paranormal for as long as I can remember, mainly because of the experiences that frequently happen to me and around me. This is a big question. Am I crazy, or do you think that maybe, for whatever reason, spirits or ghosts or whatever you want to call them are attached to me? I brought this up to my mom a few years back, as we've all had unexplainable experiences. She told me that ever since I was born, no matter what house we lived in, there were always similar experiences that seemed to revolve around me, or at least happen more frequently around me. The bulk of things that happened while I was younger, maybe about 14, I'm now 20. Scared, more fascinated than anything. We would hear voices, knocks, things that would be misplaced, only a minute or two after putting them down. Or things would just move on their own in general. The voices we would hear would always sound like they were coming from my room while it was completely vacant, or from the hallway around my room. As I've gotten older, they've gotten more interactive. Here is why we think it's connected to me. I moved out with my boyfriend when I was 18. As soon as I moved out, absolutely all the activity at my parents' house stopped, and he said it felt much lighter there. However, my boyfriend and I started having really weird things happen at our apartment. It wasn't just knocks and voices anymore, but I would see things afterwards. I say see because sometimes I would actually see them, and sometimes it was like a mental image in my head. I know that sounds crazy, but it was pretty consistent. Due to some unfortunate physical illnesses, we have moved in with my parents in their new house for the time being. Again, though they experienced nothing while I was gone, activity has started up again now that I'm back. We regularly have doors close, objects move, hear singing and talking from the basement, while no one is there, etc., etc. Again, I'm not too frightened by it. I've never had anything physical happen to me, for some scratches here and there that were completely random, showed up quick, and were unexplainable. But what do you guys think? I hope this was decently written to get my point across. I've never posted anything like this, so I don't even know where to begin. Side note, since spirits seem eager to communicate with me, we've posted online about a sort of haunted item removal service. We ask that people send their supposed haunted objects, and we will document all activity surrounding while it is in our possession, if there is any, and then either send our findings and the object back to them, or keep it safe here where it will be blessed by a family friend who's in that line of work. We don't charge except the sender required to pay shipping to and from. It's mainly an experiment with my maybe ability to attract or communicate with spirits, and to dig deeper into the paranormal. 4. So this happened 8 years ago in the spring of 2009. I was a young 20-year-old about to turn 21 that May. For the record, I'm also female. I lived in a small suburb near Onalaska, La Crosse, Wisconsin, and worked in a decent hotel at the time as a housekeeper during the day while I concentrated on getting my high school equivalency diploma at night. This day was an easy one. I didn't have many rooms assigned to me, and worked quickly. Before the shift always started, we had lists of rooms that were assigned to us, and printed out by the lead housekeeper before we got in that morning. Like I said, mine was pretty short, and I worked as quick as I could to help my fellow employees at the end of the day. However, I remember having at least 1 or 2 suites to clean that day. It was towards the end of my list. I was just finishing up a suite on the ground floor, and then had 1 room left before I went to help the other ladies. In this suite, I had just finished vacuuming, and had to dust, then that was it. I was wrapping up the cord on the vacuum. I'd like to note I'm fairly short, and I didn't have to bend down to do that. When in the middle of it, I felt a hard tug on my hair. Any other lady with long hair who has worked as a housekeeper knows you're required to pull your hair up while cleaning. Mine was in a ponytail. This tug was hard, enough to send my head nudging back a little. While I'll fully admit I'm a sucker for the paranormal, when something happens to me, or I read these stories, or even watch shows like Ghost Adventures and Paranormal Witness, I still try to come up with a logical explanation. At first I thought it might have been a co-worker or guest. I worked with my stepbrothers at the time, fiancé, and I wouldn't put it past her to pull a small prank or get my attention like that. In the layout, I'd like to note that I was facing towards the dresser, so my back was nothing but open air. However, I turned after my hair was pulled, expecting to see and hear a co-worker, or child of one of the guests, running out of the room. Nothing. As much as I tried, I couldn't come up with a logical explanation, or having my hair pulled, and I know it happened. I felt it. It's just like I said, the yanking was hard enough to send my head back a little. As soon as I couldn't for the life of me come up with a rational explanation for what had happened, I began to panic and nearly broke out into tears. However, I reminded myself I was at work, and the best thing to do from there was just to finish cleaning the suite and get out of there. After my work was finished, I decided to go help my brother's fiancée. She's a bigger believer in the paranormal than I am. Like, she buys into all the crappy ghost hunting shows, so I had no problem with telling her what happened. Luckily, like I thought, she believed me, and we freaked out together. It was nice to confide in someone about this experience who wouldn't call me crazy. Hell, to my surprise, my boss even believed me and told me about a few deaths that occurred in the hotel. None of which happened in the suite I cleaned, but they had happened nonetheless. I asked the head housekeeper to no longer have me clean that suite. She agreed. For a while, at least. To add to the creepiness, during that time my stepbrother's fiancée was assigned to that room, and she told me of an experience she had in it. She told me that when she had entered the room, she either turned the light off or on, I don't remember exactly which, and in the middle of her cleaning she had to run to the room where she was keeping her cleaning supplies, soaps and shampoos, etc. When she came back to the suite, the light was opposite of what it was when she left. Now, sure, it could have been another co-worker messing with the light while she was gone, but we had a rule to follow whenever we had to leave a room for some reason. We had to close the door and keep it locked with our carts in front of the doorway. This was so some psychotic gas couldn't get into the room and trap us, essentially for our own safety. My stepbrother's fiancée informed me that her cart was in the exact same spot it was in when she left. It wasn't moved even an inch. That and the fact that she was only gone for about a minute or so. If someone had been in there, she would have seen them come out. So this was one of my few paranormal experiences, and easily the one that freaked me out the most, because whatever was in that suite with me actually touched me. When I quit, I swore I would never work as a housekeeper again. The pay was horrible, and this experience was enough to creep me out from working in the field in the future. 5. Okay, so about 4 years ago, I got an old Ouija board from my then boyfriend's grandma. I was stoked. I'd always wanted one. I've always been into creepy paranormal stuff. My boyfriend wasn't too keen on it, but I didn't care. So fast forward a few months later, I had been begging my friend, we'll call him Ryan, to play Ouija board with me. Now Ryan wasn't too into the idea. He told me some pretty fucked up stories about his experiences with the Ouija board. But me being me, I kept asking, and he's pretty easy to sway, so he finally agreed. I live in Washington State, and he lived out deep in the woods. Like, we are talking no cell phone service, closest store is 5 miles away. The house he lived in was like a wood cabin. It was actually a really cool house, but the guy that owned the house, which was Ryan's roommate, was out of town, and he worked up in Alaska on fishing boats, so he would be gone for 3 months at a time, which was cool because I could come over, and we had free reign of the house. So anyways, I bring the Ouija board over, and of course, me being a sucker for atmosphere, we waited till night to play. And I turned off all the lights in the house, and we lit some tea light candles. I had never played Ouija before, so Ryan explained it to me, and we started to play. The first time we played, it didn't get much. The planchette moved around, but nothing made much sense, so we stopped playing. After the first night is when we started to hear stuff in the house. I basically lived at Ryan's when his roommate was out of town because he didn't like being in the house alone all the time, and I wasn't happy with my living situation, so it was mutually beneficial. But we started hearing noises in the house. We would be watching TV and hear knocks. Ryan would always check the door and look out the window, but no one was ever there. Keep in mind, we are in a pretty rural area. So in the beginning, it was pretty much isolated to knocks and weird random noises, so we didn't think much of it. So a couple weeks later, my boyfriend was over, and his friend, Jake, came too. We were all just chilling, and I was like, "Yo guys, let's play Ouija in the basement." We were drinking, and poor Ryan was the only one not really down to play, but majority rules, so we take the Ouija board down to the basement, which is finished, by the way. We start playing and asking questions. This time it's much more coherent. We ask the usual questions. What's your name? How old were you when you died? Are you a good spirit? Etc. When we asked if it was a good spirit, it said no. We asked why. He spelled out Kill. At this point, we all started looking at each other, kind of weird, asking each other if one of us was purposely moving it. So we asked, "Who did you kill?" and it spelled out Baby. At this point, I'm really getting creeped out. We keep asking questions like, "Why did you do that?" And all it would say was, "Mama, Mama, Mama," over and over again. It was fucking scary, so we ended the session and decided not to play with it in the house anymore. That's when the activity started to pick up. I remember being at work a couple times and Ryan would call me all freaked out, saying he heard people talking up in his roommate's room, but he knew he was the only one in the house. More knocking, etc. So a couple weeks later, I'm over there and my boyfriend was over as well. And we all went to bed. My boyfriend and I were sleeping in the guest room, and Ryan was sleeping in his room. I woke up having to pee, so I went to the bathroom to do my business, and I hear footsteps outside of the bathroom door. And they had wood floors, so they were really creaky. You could definitely tell when someone is walking by. I just figured it was Ryan or my boyfriend getting a drink or something. I keep hearing someone walking around in the hall outside the bathroom. I figured maybe they were waiting for me to get out. So I finish up and open the door and there's no one there. And it's pitch black in the hall. I start getting that weird, creeped out feeling, so I scurry back into my room and my boyfriend is sleeping in bed. I wake him up and ask if he was just up and he's like, "No, leave me alone," and turns and goes back to sleep. So me, being me, I had to make sure. So I went into Ryan's room and he was passed out snoring. So I ran my ass back to bed and told myself, if I have to pee in the middle of the night, I'm just gonna hold it. So keep moving forward in time. I get a call from Ryan and he's freaked out. I was working and he was home alone. He was walking past the room that I would stay in to go do his laundry. And he saw someone in there out of the corner of his eye, and he stopped and backed up, but no one was there. It really scared him, but there was nothing I could do, and I told him to just go to his room and shut the door. Fast forward again. I'm sleeping over there and I had to wake up really early, like 4 a.m. for work. So I wake up and start getting ready in the bathroom. I hear footsteps outside the bathroom door again. So I figure it's Ryan because he worked at a nursing home in the area, and he worked really early. So I keep hearing someone walk around outside of the bathroom in the hallway, but I didn't worry too much because I figured Ryan was up and getting ready for work as well, so I finish in the bathroom and walk out, fully expecting there to be lights on. And Ryan walking around getting ready, but when I open the bathroom door, it's dead quiet and pitch black. No lights on anywhere in the house except for the bathroom. Immediately my whole body tensed up, and I got this awful, dreadful feeling, and all the hair stood up in my body. No joke, it's giving me goosebumps as I write this. After the initial wave of freaked out feeling, my mind started working again, and I told myself, I need to turn on every light in this goddamned house. So I bolted to my room and turned on the light, also flipping on the one in the hall on my way. I looked out the window to see if Ryan's car was still in the driveway, but to my horror, it was gone. I called him because I was so scared and asked when he had left for work. He said he'd been at work for about an hour. Mind you, by this time, I had only been up for about 15 minutes. That was it. I was getting the fuck out of there. I did not want to be in that house alone. So I get all my stuff together for work and grab my keys and walk out to the front door. And when I get to the door, I get that dread feeling again. And I freeze up and something makes me look to my left towards the basement door. And I see this misty white figure just like float down the basement stairs out of sight. I jerked that fucking door open so fast and booked it out of there. I wouldn't stay there alone again. I didn't even like spending the night anymore after that. Ryan still heard strange noises and people talking the whole rest of the time he lived there. This is a true story. I haven't played with the Ouija board since. It's in my hall closet. I don't touch it anymore. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, Episode 6. Big thanks go to all the good folks who let me use their stories. Special shout out goes to Ashantez for the great work he keeps doing. I'll certainly keep bringing you Ashantez's stories for as long as he keeps posting them and as long as he says it's okay for me to do so. Yeah, it's been a busy day for me here in Hellfreezer Land. Oh, don't judge, but I was out catching Pokemon earlier. I didn't think I'd actually be able to install the app because there were some issues with Intel processors, which is what my phone's got. I've got a Zen phone too, which is a bloody good phone. It's just apparently they weren't supporting Intel processors anymore. But I guess they changed their mind because the app officially came out in the UK and I installed it and it was working great. It's nothing to do with paranormal or ghosts or anything. I just thought I'd share. Well, let me think. Where are we now? Okay. Right, as we stand right now, I'm hoping for a TIFU tomorrow, but responses to my messages have not exactly been abundant. But don't worry, there will be something up. Even if it's just true scary stories. I've usually got plenty of those on the go. Let me think, where else? I'm about to begin work on a collaboration with another YouTuber. I'm not going to say who it is, but it's someone whose work I've enjoyed for quite a while now. Oh yes, I'll just mention it, and I'll keep mentioning it for the next few videos just so anyone who's interested knows. I'm putting together a Q&A, so if you have any questions, I will do my best to aid them. So, whatever you like, put it in there, try not to be too rude, be weird if you like, and I will endeavour to answer your questions. Okay, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.